In our last episode, we designed, sculpted, and even molded a brand new figure and cast it in resin. But I want to do like the professionals do, and I want to give me some toy wax and finalize my figure. I said, there's got to be a reason all the professional toy makers use hard wax. Here's my original sculpt, which was made from cast clay and epoxy sculpt, but we want to take it to a hard wax so we can put that really nice surface finish on it. Yeah, look at that. But first we need to get some wax, and you can buy this right here at the Complete Sculptor. This is AZBROWAX, based on the Hasbro toy wax formula. But this is a DIY channel, so I said, Craft Baby, let's show the people how to make their own wax. And we have to say thank you to Mr. Scott Hensey for sharing his wax recipe. If you don't know this gentleman, you probably do know some of his sculpts if you've seen some of the Ninja Turtle figures or Earthworm Jim are some of my favorites of his sculpts. But he has done Happy Meal premiums, all kinds of sculpts, and graciously shared his wax recipe.
This was a personal recipe that I've been working on for a long time.
Mr. Scott, thank you so much for sharing your wax recipe with us. I'm following Scott's exact gram amounts, which makes a pretty big batch, but if you want to make a small batch, because these ingredients are expensive, I'll include a link to the Wax Lab guys. They have also provided a guide that breaks down the ingredients by percentage. Another fantastic resource for learning about traditional toy wax. Check the description for links. Craftman is using a crock pot from the 1980s, but there are quicker and more efficient ways to heat the wax. First, we're going to add our carnauba wax, 240 grams of it. This wax has a higher melting point than any of the other waxes we'll be using. So we're going to go ahead and start it heating up right now. Mama told me that if you watch it, it won't melt, so we better not watch it. In a separate container, let's measure out 240 grams of candelilla. 240 grams. Beeswax, here comes the beeswax, but only 60 grams. It's starting to smell really nice out here. Nextly, in a larger container, we're going to add our paraffin wax, a whopping 1,350 grams. Now comes the powder. I chose not to get baby powder, quote unquote, because we don't need the extra fruit smell good additives, whatever. We just need talc, T-A-L-C. And we also need our breathing protection. Talc is what gives body and hardness to the wax, so we need a buttload of talc, 1,500 grams of talc. I decided to pour out 1 bag of talc and check to make sure the gram size of the talc was on the money, close enough. Because trying to measure out all of this talc at once, look at that talc. This would be silly to do something. Don't do that with that talc. That's a mess. Alright, our carnauba has melted. So now we can start adding our other waxes. The candelilla, the beeswax, and the paraffin. This is where Craftman got pretty nervous right here. Look at this. Okay. We still gotta add all that talc. How's this gonna work? It's gonna work. Watch out. Now for some color, which we achieve using nothing more than crayons. This is where you can have a little fun. Our craftsman did not want to try and copy Mr. Scott Hensey's exact color.
Because when you mix up your own wax, use my recipe, but come up with your own color. I think that's fair.
So I'm going for a gray look. I took me some black crayons, some white crayons, and some gray crayons, and that equals gray crayons. Notice I'm not really getting in there and stirring, mixing. I'm just letting things settle together. All right. This is where some patience is required, but please do keep checking it. Don't ever leave your heat source unattended for extended periods of time. Now I'm checking the temperature with the candy thermometer. Why come? Well, toy wax is best cast at around 160 degrees. If you pour it when it's hotter, the ingredients may separate. Now I'm pouring the wax into a bunch of smaller molds. That way, when we want to use the wax in the future, it's in a convenient unit. Wax shrinks as it cools, so I knew we could get away with using these metal molds. Now for our main character mold, which has been coated with baby powder to reduce the surface tension. And now please bear witness to my first mistake by not filling the molds 100% and putting extra hot wax on top. Don't do this. I also poured some wax into some of these old molds that I found so we could have some test pieces. Now I'm going to take all these little chunks and blocks and pieces and put them in a dust-proof container, so that whenever it comes time to sculpt something, I can just pull me out a little chunk and just melt it. Now that's a pretty substantial amount of toy wax. Like I said, the ingredients are expensive, but this right here, I don't know when I'm going to run out of it. But this right here is going to last me probably a very long time. And while we're at the melting and pouring stage, since the crock pot's easy to clean out when the wax is melted, I decided to go ahead and melt up this AZBROWAX. This will also be an opportunity to show you how important it is to preheat your molds. I'm heating the silicone molds up to around 160 degrees. And I'm also checking to be sure the wax is around 160 degrees. After pouring your wax, you want to let the mold sit and cool for a while. It's going to take a pretty good time for them things to cool off. And now I can show you what preheating your mold will do for you. All right. I went ahead and did 2 casts in both different waxes because that's what it looks like when you get the mold to the right temperature. If you don't, you might have some lines. It's actually easier to see right here because see that line right there? The wax cooled and went down into the mold, and I had to pour some on top of it, but I poured it too late and I have a line. If you need to pour wax, add it to your mold, do it while it's hot. Yeah. Alright, so one way or the other, whether you DIY your own, make your own wax, or just buy some AZBROWAX, you have some hard wax. Why do we want to work with wax anyway? What is the point of using hard wax instead of clay?
Why bother with wax? Well, generally if we're starting a toy, in this case an action figure, we get as far as we can with clay, and then you find that you need to get even tighter. So we make a silicone mold, cast wax, and that allows us to sharpen, to polish, to finish.
Now I don't want to just start carving on this being our first time using toy wax. So I thought we should just go ahead and let's just start cutting into these little test pieces. These feel very, very, very similar. I will say, yeah, almost indistinguishable by feel. Let's cut on them and see what happens. Let's see, we're probably not going to need silicone tools. But we can definitely use a bar tool, any of these hard edge metal tools like this right here, scribers, probes or owls. Look, that's a file. You can use a file on hard wax, and rakes. So let's try to scribe a little line in here. Now keep in mind, this is not the actual technique I'm showing you. We're just testing how this wax reacts to these tools, all right? All right. Let's try this bar tool real quick. That's pretty smooth. It does allow you to scribe some pretty smooth lines. It has kind of a plasticky feel, I like to call it. It is brittle on the whole, but as far as working into these surfaces, working your details, yeah, those details are pretty sharp. And y'all saw me just sit there, just scribe them in with a little metal scribe and a bar tool, but I really like that. Check out these two turtles right here. I cast this in a old mold I had, a pewter. This was designed for metal. But anyway, I just poured the wax in it. And so we have these turtle casts. And notice that some of the details around the shell are pretty soft, all right? And that makes sense because you see the mold. There's not a lot of depth to those ridges in there. So that's okay. We can cut in those details, and that's what we have to start thinking about with wax, is we are cutting the details, all right? If we keep our fingers in control, we can kind of just kind of etch out them details there. And I'm just gently scraping and carving and etching, but you can see that it's just cutting right into there, and we can get some really groovy details. Yeah, and a cool thing about wax is, see, I've done all this little scribing here. Let's say we go to work on, like that, we're gonna need to do some work on that. And let's say we're over here fiddling around with it, and we flip it over, ain't nothing smudged, ain't nothing out of place. This stuff won't even pick up fingerprints. When it's in this condition I'm talking about, when it's hard wax. Here's you a 2-for-1 example. This little gentleman right here has some chill lines. Looks like I did not heat his mold up at all, so that's why we have, see those lines right there? See that? But we can literally just smooth that thing right on out. Smooth it right on out. Another fantastic thing about wax is we could take just some wet or dry sandpaper and a little water. And we want to be true to the surface integrity, whatever energy that we captured in the clay. We don't want to lose it right here. We just want to finish the surface out and add any sharpness, also any smoothness. You can even use micro mesh if you want to get crazy polished. Just keep that in mind. I decided to try a piece of steel wool. Also, I'm wearing my respirator. You're going to get some bits and pieces and particles on your wax sculpts, and here's the good news, it's wax, so you can just run it under some cold water. Yeah, but look at this, we got some issues. Let's try some hot tools right here, yeah. Alright, so we never used one of these before, so I'm going to turn it on. I saw Robert TOLONE had his set on 4, so I'm going to say 3.5, I don't know. Maybe. Let's just see what happens. I do know that when it's flashing, that means it's heating up, okay? So let's let it heat up a little bit. So we're heating up, and I'm going to get me a little scrap, a block of hard wax. The reason why is because we're going to be needing to pull from this to add to our sculpt, okay? All right, let's see what we got. All right, so we got some heat. Now, with wax, we can't just melt the slab and then fill in a hole with it. We have to kind of think of it like welding. Both surfaces, we have to heat the surface and we're going to put hot wax into the surface. Okay. So if you let wax build up on the heated tool here and just let it sit there for a while, eventually it's going to kind of just want to burn off and just kind of fizzle and smoke. So that's why I'm just kind of keeping on dipping it in this right here. I'm going to heat this up and I'm going to get me a little wax on here. Got to make sure that we heat it up. It's kind of, like I said, remember, it's like welding. All right, so look right there. See, on the toes we have some little bubbles, little defects, because Craftsman did not vent this mold. At the toes, you're going to run into bubbles more than likely. So let's look at how we can fix them. So once again, another area where wax has a little bit of a natural advantage, we can just take a little area like that. Wax is pretty good. Like I said, it just naturally going round, okay? It's when you want to add your sharp details, hard edge details, that you're going to have to subtract after you have added wax, okay? Using cold cutting tools. I hope that makes sense. His little mouth right there has a little roughness to it, but watch, we can take concave areas and just kind of lightly, gently wallow it out a little bit, and then just let it settle. All right, that little dimple, you know. So assume we have our character to this stage right here, and we say, you know what, I'd like for that to get even more shiny finish to the surface. This is some like stocking material right here, and you can just take and just kind of buff it, burnish it, you know, burnish it a little bit, polish it. It just takes a polish so very well. I decided to try a little test here. These turtle shell ridges, I said wax kind of forms a concave dip, you know, a kind of natural roundness, a shoulder. I said, I wonder if we can add some smoothness to these grooves. This might not be orthodox, but I'm just learning. The amount of elbow grease required to put a polish on hard wax is not very significant, to be honest. I feel like if a strong enough breeze come by, it's going to probably add a little more polish to it. I like it, though. I like the fact that my details are there. I'm not going to rub them or squish them or, you know, accidentally just erase them right there. Pretty fantastic. Perhaps nervousness is part of the human experience. But let's just go ahead and work on this wax without fear, without trepidation, knowing we can just pour us up another one if we need to. All right. Yeah. There we go. We got some experience with toy wax. So what's the next steps right here? Well, this is the stage where we make new molds, rotocast it in a tough resin, and make us a hollow semi-flexible figure. But I fell into a trap that Tim Bruckner over here warned me about. Pinholes. Now these are not a big deal. Like Tim said, glazing compound can fill these holes in a resin cast. But Craftman wants the wax copy to be absolutely smooth and right as possible before I make my set of rotocast molds. By the way, this book, Pop Sculpture, nice resource for future toy makers. I have a link in the description to this book. Again, don't be intimidated by a full crock pot of wax. Visit Wax Lab Guys for information on smaller batches with much more valuable resources as well. Thank you for watching this video. Until next time, I love y'all and keep on steady crafting.